Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation's LNTV. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. Can't have escaped your attention that Justice Brett Kavanaugh appears to be gracing our newspapers again. We've had a bombshell report from the New York Times on fresh accusations against the Supreme Court Justice. Here to help us sift through them, see what weight they hold, see if there's any merit to these accusations, is our legal affairs editor, Mr. Scott DeCosenza. Welcome, Scott.
Fake news, fake news, fake news. Lest we spend 1 minute talking about this story before we get into the fact that it's a complete fake news story. Hello, Mark. And
hello, Scott. So what are you saying? Are you saying that there's some reason to doubt these latest accusations?
Well, they're not in fact accusations. That's part of what it makes them fake news. There's no when somebody says there's an accusation of some sexual misconduct or impropriety against someone, the natural thought is for somebody to think that some person has said that another person has wronged them, has behaved unacceptably or inappropriately.
There must be an accuser.
Right. That's not what we have here. What we have here is that I believe it's Robin Pogrebin and Kate Kelly are trying to sell a new book. They work for the New York Times, and the New York Times published this big story on Saturday like there were some new allegations. What we do have is a report that one of Kavanaugh's Yale undergraduate classmates witnessed an incident while Kavanaugh was in Yale as an undergraduate. So a teenage Brett Kavanaugh was at a party where he was naked at some point, and that somebody pushed him, and somehow his penis made contact with a woman's hand. That is the entirety of the allegation, quote unquote allegation. I don't know, by the way, how it mechanically happens that one person pushes another person's genitalia into the hands of a third party, but that's what the allegation is. Not that Brett Kavanaugh himself did anything. Perhaps he undressed himself. We don't have the details from that part of the story, how he became to be unclothed, but it's referred to as a booze-soaked dorm party. So yeah, right. Go ahead.
Okay, I really don't know where to go with this one. However, so there are apparently, from what I've been led to understand, is there are several people connected to this who have denied that that this happened, or that they have no recollection.
Well, that's an interesting wrinkle to the story, Mark. The New York Times, which, by the way, dismissed its public editor in the wake of the Trump presidency. The public editor is a person who sort of calls the paper to task for things like baseless stories that just advance their electoral preferences rather than an elimination of an important issue regarding a Supreme Court justice, for instance.
Just for example.
Right. And what they've said is, and this actually is now, there's an editor's note attached to that New York Times story. And we presume it was placed there only as a result of the work of Molly Hemingway. Molly Hemingway is an excellent writer for the Federalist website. And she was tweeting out that she had seen an advanced copy of this book, and that she read in the book that the quote unquote the victim, God, I hate to even for with the air quotes to call this person a victim, the woman at the party who allegedly had Kavanaugh's genitalia made contact with her hand, does not recall the incident. Okay, so there was in her mind no incident. Not to mention the fact, Mark, and I think this is important, in this all came to light, the Kavanaugh sort of pressure cooker of hearings in the Me Too kind of through the lens of the Me Too, right? Which is at its best, women speaking up about being sexually assaulted and to a lesser extent, but more prevalently, sexually harassed at work. It's not about whether or not a 19-year-old took his penis out at a dorm party, and whether or not that then means that person can't hold high office for the rest of their life. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not about irrelevant to Kavanaugh's service. Another detail in the book that was disclosed and reported by Molly Hemingway and not reported by the New York Times is that Leland Kaiser is the name of the woman who Christine Ford said she went to, or then it was Christine Blasey, I guess, went to the quote infamous party where she alleged that Kavanaugh, we'll say, attacked her. And Ms. Kaiser reports that she doesn't believe the story. She doesn't believe that it happened. So now that doesn't make Ms. Ford's account untrue, but the New York Times conveniently leaves out fairly compelling and important testimony that goes against the narrative we presume they wish would happen, and yet publishes with great fanfare this kind of, again, an allegation. No, it's not an allegation. Basically, it's a rumor about a drunken nude incident. That's literally the entirety of it. Somebody was nude at a drunken party in a dorm room, and that's somehow news to the New York Times.
Am I right in thinking that the only corroborator to this story is somebody who may have, let's be kind in this and say, may have other allegiances?
Mark, let me stop you and interrupt and say there is no corroboration to the story. We just have Mr. Steyer's account. That's it. There's no corroboration to the story.
Okay.
So I mean, it's like maybe I'm being a bit strident, but it's one of these things where how can they think this? I mean, it is the New York Times. Even for those of us who have given up on it being objective in any stretch, you kind of have a high hope for it to sort of meet some obligation of good reporting and ethics, and there's just nothing there here.
This is what happens.
The National Enquirer.
Yes, yeah. The National Enquirer. We actually get that in the UK as well, the National Enquirer. It's always worth reading the cover, I think. So really, at the end of this, Scott, does Brett Kavanaugh, does he have anything to worry about?
Well, the only thing he has to worry about is people making stuff up about him, and unfortunately, he can't go live his life because of this kind of ridiculousness. I think that Brett Kavanaugh's jurisprudence is fair game for much criticism. I don't favor the jurisprudence of Mr. Kavanaugh in most of his cases. I don't expect he'll be a justice on the Supreme Court that I will think was a fantastic justice. But that doesn't mean he sexually assaulted anybody, or that something he did as a teenager weighs in on his fitness for office as a Supreme Court justice. So I don't think his position on the court is in jeopardy, but unfortunately, they're going to make his private life as hellacious as they can, it seems like.
I did notice that as soon as the initial, I don't even know what word to use, the initial rumors came out about this, that it was very, very short time before Democratic Party candidates for the presidential nomination jumped on this bandwagon, calling for, we must investigate and impeach. Scott, your thoughts? Is this a shameless maneuvering, or is it something that should be investigated, even if it seems at the moment that it really is just only a rumor?
Investigate what? It's not like they said he held up a liquor store where there was a crime committed. There's nothing to, in other words, what do you investigate? The idea that he was naked at a dorm party in 1981. What are we talking about here? There's no crime alleged. There's no. It's just. I don't even. As you can tell, I'm speechless. It just seems crazy to me that we're talking about it, and that actually it's not as crazy that we're talking about it. What's really crazy is that the New York Times is talking about it. Perhaps, Mark, this has something to do with the court's upcoming term, to try to back him off of some conservative position that he might hold. We do have, and people can stay tuned to future LNTVs, as well as written work on LibertyNation.com, which I'll be putting out detailing the work ahead during this term of the court. There are some hot button issues, though, in terms of guns and other things that they'll be deciding. And maybe this is just an attempt to try to bully Kavanaugh into being less conservative or scare him. I don't know. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Scott, with those words of wisdom, it doesn't make any sense. Thank you very much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Mark.
And thank you to you at home. If you learned a little something, if you enjoyed it, click the subscribe button down below, please. Or if you fancy, head on over to LibertyNation.com, where, as Scott mentioned, we've got more articles, more LNTV, more podcasts, more radio. We've got the whole works there. Come over and check it out. Hope to see you soon.